Hello, welcome everyone. I'm France-Luce Benson. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Fountain Theater and very excited for another Breaking It Down discussion. And I am so honored to have the director of our current production, An Octoroon by Brendan Jacob Jenkins, Judith Moreland, and also the set designer and costume designer of the production. We have our set designer, Frederica Nascimento. Hopefully I said that right. And Naila Aladdin Sanders, our costume designer. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so thrilled to have you all here. And if we could start, just go around and I'd love to hear, I always love to hear artists' origin stories. And so if you want to just kind of briefly talk about what led you to being a part of this production. Have you had a previous relationship with the Fountain Theater? What got you to this craft? And answer that any way you want, how you got to LA. I would just love to hear a little bit more about all of you individually. So let's start with Judith Moreland, our director.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. It's great to sit down with three very talented women. I like that we're all women. I think that's not an accident, but I'm very grateful for that. My journey to the Fountain and this play goes back a long time. I've been an actor. That's how the Fountain has known me for a long, long time. And I think the first time I worked at the Fountain was at a guest production of To Be Young, Gifted, and Black that I believe, Naila, you were the costume designer for?
Yes.
So that's how I first met Naila, which was, I won't say how long ago it was, but it was a long time ago, Naila. And then I came back and I did two other shows at the Fountain. Miss Julie, an adaptation that was written by Stephen Sachs, who's the artistic director. And then a few years ago, I did a play by Robert Schenken called Building the Wall at the Fountain, which again, Naila was the costume designer for. So I've known Naila and collaborated with her for a long time. Right after I left Building the Wall, that was in 2017, I had already started directing and I had a gig up. I left the production early because I had a gig up in Sacramento, directing a production of An Octoroon by Brendan Jacob Jenkins. Yeah, so this is my second time with this show after seeing the original production in New York in 2015. And as I tell everybody who will listen to me, I became obsessed with the play after I saw it because it was one of the most profound experiences I have ever had in the theater. It rocked my world when I saw that play. I left reeling. I had never experienced anything like that. It just spoke to me and moved me and made me think, and it stayed with me. And I was like, I don't know, but somehow I have to be involved with this play. So in 2017, the artistic director at Capitol Stage reached out to me and said, we'd love for you to come up and direct. Have you ever heard of a play called An Octoroon? And I was like, have I? It's my play. I would be, oh my God, I'd love to do it. So I went up there, had a great experience working on it there. Loved working on the play, beautiful production. And when I came back down to LA, the first thing I did was look to see who's done it in Los Angeles. And even though the play had premiered in 2014 in New York, it had never been done in LA. And I was shocked because it is such a profound meditation on who we are as Americans, who we are in the theater. It's a play about theater. It's about us as a collection of human beings. It's about representation, inclusion, diversity, so many things. It's funny, it's sad, it's tragic. I was like, how has it not been done in LA? So I started pitching the play to everybody, every theater I could get on the phone with, including the Fountain. And the Fountain said, Stephen said, it hasn't been done here. Let's look into it. And then that kind of brought me to 2021. We were going to do it originally last summer, but of course COVID happened. But to the Fountain's credit, in the kind of the dark days of it, last November, December, I got an email from Stephen saying, we're going to open an outdoor theater and we want to start with An Octoroon. Are you still interested? And I said, 100%. And then from there, we just moved forward. And that's how I eventually wound up collaborating with these two incredibly talented women to create the production that's on stage right now.
Love that. I love that. Well, thank you for getting the ball rolling to bring it here for these audiences to experience this. Frederica, how did you come to be a part of this production?
Well, I've been collaborating with the Fountain Theater. I have to mention 3 amazing productions I did with the Fountain. They always surprise me with the choice of plays and the crew and the cast when I work at the Fountain. And my first play there was directed by Simon Levy, Opus. It was my first play quite some time ago. And then I also collaborated with Shirley Giovini. We did In Red and Brown Water, which was also a great project to work with. And I did also El Nogalar with Laurie Woolery. That was just another collaboration. So when Steven Sachs contacted me, asking me if I wanted to be involved in an octoroon by this amazing playwright, Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, at the Fountain, bringing live theater to the Fountain, to Los Angeles for the first time after being all of us away from, like this contact with the audience, and building an outdoor stage in the parking lot. I just said, yes, absolutely, I'm in. And of course, he told me Judith Moreland was gonna direct, and I was thrilled to do that. I just couldn't say no. I was really thrilled. It's impossible not to want to work with the Fountain. So here I am. It's great experience.
Naila?
Yes, well, I have been associated with the Fountain for many, many years. Before Judith and I did what was that?
Young, Gifted, and Black.
Young, Gifted, and Black. I think my first play may have been the Scottsboro Boys. I can't remember when I started working with the Fountain, but the association with them has been great for me. I look at every play I do as a history lesson, because most of the plays that I do have historical references. And the Fountain has been one of the theaters that really embraces new plays, significant plays. So I don't really question really what they're doing. If they ask me to do it, I pretty much do it. And I've been really fortunate that the collaboration is always good. Even if we disagree, it comes out to be, something that I can be happy with. And I'm really happy working with them. So actually, I worked with Frederica a couple of times before in the Red and Brown Water. And I believe you also did the Latino Theater Company, the road weeps and the well runs dry.
Yes,
that one.
We collaborated on that.
So yes, so this is
I have to say, it's so great, Naila, when I heard we were going to do the costumes, because I know it's going to be, we're just like all connected. And again, do we ever disagree?
No.
It's like that's the process, and I know we're going to speak and talk about it with Judith, because I'm inspired by collaboration, and I can't say that enough with my work. And when I worked the first time, Judith and we just spoke on the phone before we actually started working on the play, and I just felt completely connected with what Judith was saying about this play, and how important it was for us to have it staged, especially at the fountain. And
yeah, I mean, can you speak a little bit more about that? Either one of you. I mean, what were the initial conversations like? I mean, one of the brilliant things about this play is all of the different layers and in all of the different ways that it's functioning. And so approaching this visually and, you know, thinking about design of it, like what were the initial things? What was most important to you?
Well, I think that speaking with Judith the first time, maybe because she's already directed it before, it was so crystal clear the things that she wanted to see. And it, in talking to the director is where I get my first clues of which direction I'm going to go in. But she gave me such a perfect blueprint of what to do, and still gave me lots of room to do what I wanted to do, which is great creatively, not to, you know, box me in too much to a certain thing, for me to kind of feel it out. And we had lots of conversations, the photos and the emails. Almost daily, I was communicating with her. So I'm hoping that I gave her what she wanted to see.
100%. Absolutely. And more, I always say that the great thing about collaboration, and I agree with Frederica, collaboration is what it's all about. I, of course, have ideas in my mind, but then you surround yourself by talented people. And my job really as a director is to say, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? And let's find something between what you're thinking, what I'm thinking, will create something that I never imagined. Mm-hmm. And I always feel that, well, that's what's so lovely about collaboration. It always turns into something more than what I hoped for. So yeah, I will be specific, but I always say, bring me every idea, even if you think it's a dumb idea, let me hear it, because it might spark something else. Yeah. And that's really what happened with both Frederica and Naila. All of us, we went back and forth and back and forth. Yes, ooh, I like that, but what about this? Or, that's very interesting. I haven't thought about that before. What do you think about that? And I'm sure that once we finally got, because we rehearsed a lot while they were building the set, once costumes and the set was finally up, Naila and Frederica were actually able to finally collaborate and see how things looked in front of the set and how the set worked with the costumes. So you're just collaborating the entire time. So the conversations were constant up through opening night. We were still collaborating once the show opened, just, you know, finalizing details. And that's the pleasure of working with such talented people. They think of things I never would have thought of.
And so what was the journey of, you know, creating what this production would look like? Because the play, you know, it's absurd and it's also tragic and it's funny and it's sobering. I mean, it's so many things. And so how do you land on what it's going to look like? Because I imagine as a designer, I imagine it's different than, okay, this is a comedy. So, you know, what's the process? How did you kind of get to where you landed?
Frederica, I'll let you take that.
That's for me. Okay. Well, we had 2 or 3 big challenges. The first one was, which is actually very interesting. I told Judith at the beginning, we need to create a black box, right? Because that's what the play and the playwright asks for during the beginning of the play with the prologue. And so, and we were in a parking lot where we have millions of distractions visually. And so that was like step number 1. As we started working together, Simon Levy, Steven Sachs, Scott Toomey, they were working like nonstop. They put the platform and the trusses in the parking lot, and they made it available for us to step in. So I think that was like the beginning of the beginning, was to create the black box for our show that became our theater. And I always need to have a big connection with the space, the theater, the stage where I'm going to design. With my background in architecture, that kind of informs how I deal with my first sketches already in conversation with the director. And so I just went with my tape measure to the parking lot, and the platform was there. Everything was there, the trusses were there. And I just started looking for measurements and measuring the parking lot. James Bennett was there, and he just patiently waited for me to finish my measurements. and because I actually had the dimensions of the stage. And so I really wanted to know where we are in terms of connection from our future outdoors black theater box to the building, and how could we create an easy way in and out for the actors, and what the backstage would be also for them. So I think that was like step number 1. And once we had that, I am a model designer. I build. I feel like when I'm since sketching, I start. It's almost like I'm trying to sculpt the space, and so models are fundamental in my process. And actually, that leads us to very, very funny, hilarious moments, because after some time, when Judith and I were already inside the model, sometimes we would FaceTime each other, and I would just put my cell phone into the model just to talk about possibilities of what could happen. I think, and Judith, jump in. I think the most important part of my process, as I start talking about the play and thinking, what does the director want to say about this play? I do a lot of research, like Naila. I mean, we really start looking for images that speak what the director has in mind. And so there are 3 artists I'm going to mention, because they were really important with the design. Kerry James Marshall, love his work. I was lucky to go to MoCA and see here in Los Angeles downtown, an incredible exhibition of his work. And now I'm going to throw in what I took from his work. It was this imposition of white paint, sometimes in gorgeous forms and sometimes just a splash of white that he uses in his painting and on his canvas. Norman Lewis, amazing painter that gave me and Nicolas Santiago that red, because we needed some fire and big explosion, and he just made it happen for me. Of course, Carol Walker. And Carol Walker was the artist that really brought us into the more specific locations of this design. And then just to kind of put everything tied together, I started looking into Joseph Cornell's boxes, and ultimately that kind of happened naturally. It was almost like to tell the story in this black box theater. We needed some objects. A key element for all of us was the fact that we would not have darkness, nightlight, until a certain time in the production. So when the audience enters our production, our outdoor stage, everything is exposed to daylight. And that was very important and key in decisions that we had to take. And I think we designed this play less than 2 weeks, with building. It was like, we're gonna do it. I don't even know how Naila got all those costumes like magic. Everything just came out. And so just, I don't want to extend myself too much. There's so much to tell, but what I was really interested, and Judith gave me that possibility, was to bring onto the stage a poetic transformation of reality, keeping in mind all the history that the playwright was also bringing to us, and how he started writing this play. And I was very interested in knowing and learning about how to bring, like in a sort of a Brechtian kind of way, how to bring melodrama today, and how to play with these binaries and oppositions of black and white, and all of that, all of those really, really important words, and also being theater a place for dramatic illusion. I wanted to kind of talk about that illusion of suffering and real actual suffering of the characters that is so connected to today and what's happening today in the world. And so there was kind of, I think that's why Carol Walker also came into place, because it's just her cutout dramatic figures are so human and so powerful, so meaningful, and so that everything just kind of somehow came into place, like in a natural way. And of course, with Judith help, and organizing and structuring all these emotions and images, because all of a sudden when we are researching, there's so much that at a certain point we need to say, okay, let's select, let's just go here and develop this idea. And so that's what happened in terms of research. And then it was key points lighting for me, because of that big change. So we would have the sunset coming down on stage, which was actually, I mean, just beautiful, natural light. And then this Cornell box basically was inspired by the LED screens that the fountain has, and Steven Sachs asked me, do you want to use the 30 LEDs that we have? And I asked Judith, and we just thought, yes,
Yeah.
right? Of course. I mean, who's going to say no to that? And so I started working with the dimension of those squares, and I literally started multiplying them, and it kind of creates that box that I called it black box ship, because it was inspired in research of slave ships that came to the United States. And so we started like playing with that box and how could we tell the story in a very fluid way. And also, I like not to be in the way. So I was trying to make it work, because we are not in a theater. Technically, we had to create line sets or masking whenever was needed. So there was some challenges in that regard, but the collection of objects was actually the key idea, I think, to create the space and to allow Judith to work with them and make the story. Of course, we had like the cloud was trackable. Brer Rabbit was going to the top of the box, and everybody was flying around. Eating.
That didn't happen.
There was a lot of ideas and exciting moments during rehearsals. And then, of course, Judy was there to, put everything in order and say, this is what it's going to work. And I couldn't be happier with the experience.
I love this phrase, the poetic transformation of reality, because I think it is such a beautiful way to describe how the set functioned, because it was never distracting. And when the play and the actors go in and out of these different meta realities, the set is exactly what I felt what it should be in every moment. So I thought that was so well done. And also with the costumes, which I imagine, I would just love to hear about the challenges and how you approach even just the challenges of the actors being out in the elements and the lighting changing through, over the course of the performance, and how does that impact the colors that you choose. And oh my gosh, I just want to get it in your brain. How did you create Brer Rabbit?
And let's not forget that there are so many quick changes in this play as well, where characters are literally changing from one actor is changing from one character to another, sometimes in the course of a few minutes. So the challenge was enormous.
Yes. So that was one challenge. was getting them from one costume to the other. The main one was just accumulating the costumes in a pandemic environment, because I would go shopping to my normal places and there would be nothing there. I mean, even like Target, getting socks and tights, there was no stock available in some of the stores. So just finding things were a little bit difficult. And then after that, the collaboration with the actors themselves, knowing what they had to wear when they had to change, and how to make that change happen seamlessly, so that they wouldn't have to worry about it. I mean, when I read it, I read that that Matthew's two characters were wearing different clothing. And after I read it, I knew that wasn't a possibility. I mean, I was going to say, oh, well, they could change ties or they could change jackets or something like that. No, that couldn't happen. So it was all in your imagination that they would change. And then when Judith came up with the idea of the mustache that they would take on and off, I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. I mean,
it was hilarious.
it was hilarious.
I mean, and it's a nod. It's such a nod to that, to stylistically, to the melodrama, and the villain having this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I couldn't figure out, how is he going to get that mustache on and off? And she's, oh, just put it on elastic. It was, she made it so easy for me. But yeah, it was just that each character had their own, they were so well defined. And all I had to do was to carry through with that, the definition that she gave me. And it became pretty easy at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's underselling herself. There was so much to do.
There was.
What does a field slave look like? What does the house slave look like?
Yes.
What does Brer Rabbit look like? How does, even though George and McCluskey wear similar clothing, they do look different. How can we distinguish what McCluskey, the overseer, looks like, especially when he's first introduced as a character? He does have to look very different from George, the New York dandy who's come from Paris. And so there were so many tiny details. What does the fading Southern belle look like? I think Naila just hit a home run with Dora's elaborate hoop skirt. There were just so many tiny touches all through. How do we differentiate between the older house slave Pete and the child pickaninny Paul, especially when our actor has to literally, she's the one who makes the changes the quickest, that she literally runs off as Paul and comes back on in a different entrance as Pete within about 15 or 20 lines. How did we, I mean, I still don't quite know how we got Dora, who's wearing the big hoop skirt, to take all that off, come in during the slave auction as the captain, as a man, including a beard, and literally within, it's got to be 20 seconds, Captain Ratz leaves, and then Dora comes on with $20,000. I don't know how that change happened. I really don't. It's crazy the stuff that Naila had to do all in one play. It's just crazy, but she did it.
It was great, and also
the magic of theater.
Also, Naila, remember your big loop skirt? I mean, it's so sweet and funny when she tries to get into.
And she can't get in the door.
It's like great. It just bring life, into this, structure, and that's really amazing. I just want to mention one key point for Judith. She told me since the beginning was that the big projection scene,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
it was our moment of reflection. And so, and that took a little time to figure it out, how we're going to make it happen, because the playwright mentions the projection is at the back wall of the theater. But for us, it would be too far away to actually make it happen. So we had our sensation scene with that white drop that connects with the painted splash on the stage floor that drips into the floor of the parking lot. And so we could kind of bring that for the photograph projection.
How difficult was it to decide on that image? Were there several that you went through? What were the conversations like?
That's a great question. I know the image that we use is a very famous image, and it just seems so much in keeping with the text of the moment when they talk about the image is very striking, because not only do you see the foreground of the two gentlemen, but you also see the audience. And really, if you spend time reflecting on that image, you invariably go from the horrific scene above to looking at the people who are there witnessing this horrific scene and seeing how they're responding. And then the genius of the play is the actual language from the original play, The Octoroon, that the playwright Jacobs Jenkins uses in that moment, really kind of talks about how horrific taking the law into your own hands is, and who are we to make determinations about other people. So I had always kind of had that one image in my mind, but it says only in the script that a lynching photo is shown.
Mhm.
The playwright doesn't say which one. And so I was like, well, we'll use that photo. And then as we were working on it, I just started reflecting on the word lynching. And then suddenly it occurred to me, why am I reaching back so far? Even though it's not that long ago, this photo was taken in 1930, which is not that long ago. People think, oh, it must have been in the 19th century. No, it was almost mid 20th century when that happened. But then I thought, gee, what we're living through right now, we see people take cell phone images of lynchings every day. And we were just, as we were working on this play, the trial of Derek Chauvin was coming to an end. And I thought, oh my gosh, George Floyd, we saw a 9-minute and 42-second lynching. And for a second, I was like, well, why am I reaching back? Should we show this image that we all know about? And I thought about that for a long time. And I actually talked to our dramaturg, Dr. Daphne Secret, about that. It was like, should I show a modern lynching? And we went back and forth. And then eventually I thought that might be, that is such a charged image right now that I didn't want us to be wrenched out of the world of the play that Brandon Jacobs Jenkins has created. And even though the idea of reminding the audience is that lynching is not in the past tense, we are still presently living through that, it might be too much to take the audience and show that image. So ultimately, I stuck with my original idea, which is the idea that I had talked to Frederica about before. And so we stayed with that. And I think it was the right choice. I think it was.
I think so too, because another thing that I love about the play and this production of it is, as you said, it is also about theater. It is also about artists and Black artists and the stories that we get to tell and the way that we have been represented. And so I really appreciated having those historical references throughout, reminding us like all of this media that we've been digesting for decades and centuries, like how racially charged it really is. And so I really appreciated that. And I love the little video images that played during intermission and before the
There you
show.
go.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that was our way of saying, if I'm saying, well, we can't show the murder of George Floyd might be too on the nose. We certainly can remind the audience that these racially charged images are happening not only the way we grew up watching them as children in cartoon, not even realizing what we were absorbing.
Mhm.
And then it's so shocking for the audience as adults watching this stuff and going, oh my God, what was I watching when I was watching Bugs Bunny and laughing? It never occurred to me. And then Nick Santiago, which Frederica alluded to, who designed all the videos, he found just a wealth of information that brought the audience up to present day to do exactly what you're saying, France-Luce, which is remind everybody, yeah, the play does give us a dollop of history, but we're living through exactly that, and the repercussions of all those choices and all that popular content that is so a part of who we are as Americans, and American theater and American visual and popular culture, that we are still wading through that and absorbing it and reflecting that even today. So that's the way we were able to tie what's happening right now with what's happening in 1859 in Terrebonne, Louisiana.
And the play, the play also, it raises so many questions without providing any answers at all. And how do you, Naila and Frederica, and you also, Judith, but just as designers, how do you walk that line of visually not telling us too much, not hitting us over the head with answers visually, but also honoring the text, honoring the period that we're in, this melodrama? Like, how do you walk that line? What was that process like?
Well, it was a little difficult because a lot of the plays that I do are about the Black experience. And, the story of our people is not all that happy all the time. So I just focus on trying to tell the truth in what I do. And, people wore what they wore. And I tried to show a difference between Dora's character and Zoe's character, just by in subtle ways, that one had more money than the other. And then the slaves to contrast against what Zoe was wearing had to be so much less substantial, and just the cotton prints and the ragged fabrics. It had to show without being too literal the difference between the two classes. And that's basically what I went with, trying to show the contrast between all the different classes of people that were portrayed in the play. And I remember I also done the author's other play, Neighbors. And that one was pretty, that one was a little difficult to do also. And first time I've done Blackface, actually. So this one was not as difficult as that one was, because that was my first time. This one, I think it helped tell the story a little bit better than Neighbors did. And I really enjoyed the collaboration between the actors and myself, and trying to get them to where they needed to be, and still show Judith's vision.
Judith, because you directed this before, when you directed this before, I'm guessing it was pre-George Floyd.
Yes.
How did that impact how you approached it? Did it impact how you approached the play? Did it change anything for you?
I would say yes, approaching this material after the murder of George Floyd, my first thought was, how is this play going to land on an audience? I think that Brandon Jacobs Jenkins really was at the forefront of so much theater that is being written and produced now. I mean, he really, even though it's such a recent play, so much, we're undergoing such a monumental change, not just within our culture, but also within the theater. And I think that we have a lot of that goes back to Neighbors, the play that I saw that production that Naila did, Appropriate, which is, he calls it his trilogy, his a trilogy of plays dealing with the Black experience in representation. Neighbors, Appropriate, that the Taper did, which is about a white family going back to the ancestral plantation, a modern white family, and there's a secret up in the attic, and An Octoroon. So there's a direct line between these three plays and Slave Play, which was on Broadway with Jeremy O'Harris, Passover, which is now on Broadway. We See You, White American Theater, that manifesto that was written during George Floyd. I think all of these have a direct line to a man who said, let's talk about this. And you're right, France-Luce, the brilliance of his writing, I think, is that he doesn't provide the answers. He just says, I'm just going to reflect, and I'm going to look from a scholarly, a Brechtian, and a naturalistic way of looking at exactly who we are and what our culture is and how African Americans have been represented. And then I'll just put it in your lap, audience, and let's have a conversation. So I love that. So when I reapproach this play after the murder of George Floyd, my first thought is, how is it going to land? Is it still going to have the profundity that I felt when I saw it in 2015, now that we as a culture have moved forward? But the happy answer is that, yes, it does, because this play is just such I think it's an American masterpiece. I really do. It touches on so many issues, and it really challenges you to stop and really think about what's okay, what's not okay, who can laugh at what.
Yeah.
Is it okay for a white audience to laugh at Blackface now? Is that okay? Is it okay for a Black man to wear whiteface and use the N-word? Is it okay? What's that like when you see that character use the N-word as opposed to slaves calling each other that, or just using the language casually? And audience, is it okay? Are you allowed to laugh at that? What is appropriation of culture? What does it mean to be 1/8 of something, to have labels? This play really is all about labeling and the external eye of placing a label on someone. The first line of this play is, I'm a Black playwright. I don't know what that means. And of course, you don't wake up saying, I'm a woman. We don't wake up every morning and say, okay, I'm a woman, and that's how I'm going to face the day. But as soon as we engage with someone, that's the first thing they see, or is the color of our skin. And so these are external labels that are put on us. And that has not changed in 4 years. Maybe our cultural awareness of how that's been weaponized and what that means to look the way I look and step out in the world, how that's different from how some other people, maybe people have more of an understanding of that. But the reality is, we step out in the world, and the first thing we do is, when we see other people, is we put a label on them. And so this play, I think, will stand the test of time, because this play is really asking the audience, what does that label mean? Why are you putting that label on the person?
Yeah.
And what does that say about you when you label somebody else as other? What does that actually mean? And how do we, who are labeled, how do we internalize it? Which is why the play, The Octoroon, and Zoe's journey is actually a tragedy, because she has so internalized something that nobody can see, but that she knows, that she has that one drop, that 1/8 rule. And so she's doomed from the beginning, because she never questions who she is in terms of status within this culture. because she knows that she's tainted. And that's the tragedy of the play. As a modern audience, we want to say, what are you talking about? But that's the tragedy of where we are as a culture, of putting labels on people and putting them in a black box, putting them in a box and saying, that's where you belong.
Mhm.
And that hasn't changed. In 2021, it hasn't changed.
Well, and the brilliance too. I mean, I suspect, I spoke to Mara earlier as well, and we talked about the character of Zoe and her destiny and the compassion the audience feels for her, but how brilliant it is, because it's also so telling about, Dido and Minnie, the relationship the audience has with them, which is, they're so funny and they're strong, but they're living this destiny that Zoe is so, tortured to have to face. And so it forces the audience, why weren't you feeling that for these two women? This, that's one of the things that I love. The play forces us to confront these things within ourselves, how we perceive others.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I guess,
I was just thinking about what you all said, and what's really great to design plays like this play is the possibility of change that they bring, and the time of reflection upon us, when we, in my case, I kind of strengthen the mystery of things visually that you see on stage. But that brings you to a reflection and a truth that is fundamental today. And so I think these are the kind of plays that I would love to keep designing more and more, with the classics and everything else. But this is a moment for plays like an Octoroon to be on stage.
absolutely. Before we go, I want to touch on something that you said, Judith, because we're all women here, which is amazing. I would love to ask all of you how you have navigated your careers, just in terms of what stories you get to tell. As designers, you are also storytellers, and have you had to kind of fight to be able to tell the stories that you want to tell, or have you kind of been told by people in the industry, well, you do these kinds of plays, and that's like, how have you navigated this industry that is, not only racist, but is also very misogynist, and particularly for women in these roles, as producers and directors and designers. What has gotten you through?
Well, I've been fortunate in my career to have done quite a few plays that talk about the Black experience. One of the first plays that I did was about the Haitian Revolution. And that
Really?
was phenomenal. Yes, that was a 3-part play, the history of Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and then Henri Christophe.
I'm Haitian, right?
Yeah, yes.
And I've written a trilogy about the Haitian Revolution.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes.
wow. Wow, I'd love to read that. Yeah, this was like a film. So once I did that, I felt like I could do just about anything. So, I mean, I've done a play about the child soldiers of Uganda. I've done just so many different things. Like I said, the history lesson that I learned from each play is so, it's rewarding for me because it's things that we didn't learn in school. They're out there for everyone to research if you really research it. But I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that the Haitian Revolution was the successful revolution there was what contributed to the United States gaining their freedom by seeing what happened in Haiti. And, you know, there's so many playwrights that have so much information about the world that we're living in that I would never have known had I not been picked to do the plays. And there's, I really have been picked to do them. I don't audition or I don't go after too many plays. I just decide what I want to do by what comes to me. And I've been very fortunate in my career. Like I just had to give a talk the other day about the plays that I've done. I've done more than 100 plays in the last 30, 35 years. Between the ones I've done myself and working at LA City College in the costume department and mentoring student designers. I've done quite a few, but yeah, I learn something by every play that I do.
Mm.
And so I don't pick and choose too much. I take what I get and learn from that.
Love that. Frederica?
Absolutely. It is true. It's a challenge, you know, but I've been very fortunate too, and collaborating with really great theater companies in Los Angeles as a freelancer, being design resident at the Noise Within, where they focus on classical repertory. And so I also, when I'm offered play, most of the time I really want to design them. I don't have an answer for what is your favorite play. My favorite play is all the plays in the world. And I really hope that, because that's what we do as designers, when I design costumes or when I'm also teaching. So I always tell the young generations that we as designers can design any play and can learn with it. And so that's key in moving forward. I think any designer can design anything. Of course, we bring our life experience, our cultural experience, our life experience, and that's key in that collaboration that we are so passionate about. But so far so good. It's just we really love what we do, and I think that's something that connect us all here. So we just can't get enough of designing theater and anything that comes our way. And so I want to live like a hopeful feeling for younger generations, because theater, there are always new forms of theater, and theater needs an audience, and we are going to continue doing it, hopefully forever.
Beautifully said, beautifully. Did you want to add anything to that, Judith?
I agree with both the women. I think it's interesting to hear that they both teach I teach as well. I think that that's not, again, it's not surprising that, because that's just a different form of collaboration. I think Marian Wright Edelman said, you can't be what you don't see. So I think it's so important that this upcoming group of young artists that we're mentoring and teaching, that they see us in these positions, creating a wide variety of art so they know that they can do it as well. I think, France-Luce, you asked a question that you already know the answer to in terms of being pigeonholed. I think we could have a whole conversation about that. Am I right, women? But so
Yeah.
I won't go far down that road, but I will say that a great piece of advice I got once is go where the love is. So I think it's not surprising that all of us have done a variety of collaborations at the Fountain Theater. When I first moved, I'm an Angelino, but I lived many places before I came back to Los Angeles. I will say the Fountain Theater was one of the first theaters, the small theaters in Los Angeles, where I saw myself being represented on stage. I love theater. I teach, I have a master's degree. I'm an actor. I love theater. And most of the theater I was watching when I first came to Los Angeles as an adult, as an actor, I wasn't seeing me. I saw a lot of classical theater. I saw a lot of contemporary theater. I saw a lot of theater I loved. I did not see a lot of people who looked like me getting jobs until I went to the Fountain Theater. So that's why the Fountain has always been, holds a special place in my heart. From the very beginning, they really embraced the idea of that theater should represent the city in which it's being presented. Yeah. So when we started compiling a list of who we would want to be designers for this very special production, the only thing I said is it's got to be representational. I want to be as inclusive as many women and people of color as possible. Need to bring their shared and collective experience to this play because it is such an American play. And I'm very proud of how diverse all the designers are on this show. It's rare, it's changing, but we worked very hard as the director and the producers to bring all these incredibly talented people, many of whom, Naila and Frederica excluded, have never worked at the Fountain before. There are so many designers on the show who said, I've seen shows here, I've never worked here before. And that's great that now that their work is being seen by a different and wider audience. And I think that's one of the reasons why the show has done as well as it's done. It's just that we had an enormous selection of such incredibly talented artists, both above and below the line. And hopefully that will keep moving forward the idea of not pigeonholing us. It goes back to the play of taking that label away, of not allowing whatever label people put on you to be who you are. I love directing. I love working on the Black experience. I have a lot of other experiences too. Yeah. I don't want to just direct the Black plays. I don't want to just play the characters that are written to be traditionally Black. I was trained to do Shakespeare and Chekhov and Ibsen, as well as contemporary things. Don't just put me in a little box. And so I hope that, again, as I get more opportunities to direct a variety of things, artists coming up behind me will say, okay, so that means I can do everything. I can design everything. As Frederica said, you can design every show. Naila has done 100 productions. I know they all weren't about the Black experience. Naila can design everything. That's why she's so good. That's why Frederica's so good. France-Luce, you can write about everything. I can act, I can direct everything. And people need to see that so they know that that can exist.
Yes, yes. I think that's a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much, all of you, for not just for your work on the production, it really is beautiful, but for taking the time to talk with me today. And congratulations, all of you, on the success of the production. I can't wait to see what you do next. So please stay in touch. And all of you, if you have not seen the show yet, An Octoroon, it runs through September 19th. Tickets are selling out quickly. So make sure you get your tickets soon, right now, if you haven't seen it yet. And thank you again, all of you, for doing this. It was an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It was great.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Nice to see you guys.